Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder might be my next league starter, as I finally started playing around with this build in 3.17 Siege of the Atlas, following the guide from Asmodeus, thank you mate. And so far my impressions have been very positive. You can treat this video as another build preview, as I like experimenting with different builds lately, even if not all of them result in a detailed build guide on my channel, as those take time to put together and it's hard for me to gauge the interest from my viewers up front before investing the time. So as always, I encourage you to like the video and leave a comment if you're particularly interested in this or any other of my builds to help me decide what to focus on next as far as detailed build guides and leveling guides are concerned. Now, why do I think Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder could become a very strong league starter for me going forward? Well, firstly, the build turns out to be very cheap and doesn't appear to rely on any particular uniques or expensive crafted rares. I happen to have a ton of uniques at my disposal at this particular point in 3.17 League, but this would work just as amazingly well, I believe, on a completely naked, fresh League starter character. Secondly, poison damage scaling seems to be implemented particularly well in the passive skill tree of Path of Exile, giving us a lot of impactful, juicy nodes that you feel immediately as you take them, starting to melt the bosses and trash leading up to them without any particular effort that the other builds often require, in all honesty. Third point here is a very unique and organic synergy like no other between Poisonous Concoction and the Plague Bearer skills. You throw your flasks, building up Plague Bearer, then pick up a good moment and release toxic AoE while you run through the hordes of mobs watching them pop. It's extremely efficient and very satisfying. I thoroughly enjoy myself doing it right now. Poisonous Concoction itself isn't a skill that you literally start the game with, but you get it pretty early, at level 12, same as you get your hands on, say, Arc. And this is important to me because I hate playing for half the game as one build, using one set of skills, and then have to hard pivot and sometimes use Orbs of Regret to change my build quite substantially towards something that looks like a completely different type of gameplay. Here I will not have to do any of that fancy dance. Now, to slightly less pleasant particular of the build, according to Asmodeus, this will get resolved later towards the end game and higher levels, but I think I need to acknowledge that as I talk to beginners and casuals of Path of Exile who sometimes do not reach those really high end levels. So my main issue with this build is that it relies on very heavy avoidance and spell suppression defensive layers, which means that while you are lucky, you will live. Then another moment you are unlucky and you're dead. And this state of play continues for this build up to until about level 65 by my rough calculations of passive skill tree points investment. And that is even skipping a lot of other very useful skills, nodes and masteries that we would then have to retrace our steps and go back and pick up later. So that state of play continues until you reach Iron Commander notable keystone that will convert all of your massive amounts of evasion into armor, making the incoming damage a lot more predictable and less random, less spiky and less deadly. By the looks of it, even with the defensive auras that I'm running right now, such as Grace and Defiance Banner, and no, there isn't enough mana for Determination 2, this is still a pretty kind of touch and go type of gameplay, where you have to run and pray, basically, that the RNG gods of avoidance will remain in your favor and that you will live. Not super enjoyable, I won't lie to you, but at least there is a plan to deal with this situation in this build. Shame that it comes together rather late in the game, but as long as you know what to expect, I guess it's fine. Plus, it's again very satisfying in terms of just the amounts of ridiculous amounts of poison damage and fast map clearing that you will experience even if you have to die once or twice to some very unfortunate slam from a certain boss. And that is it for today, my friends. I do like Poisonous Concoction gameplay a lot, and I'm seriously considering to optimize this build for beginners, as I always do. I start kind of with the build inspired by someone else, Asmodeus in this particular case, and then I usually make it easier. At least I try to do it, make it easier and more accessible for beginners. Especially the part that requires my attention is how do we mitigate this early dying part, which happens too much before, I will deal with this before releasing any builds of my own about Poisonous Concoction. So please let me know if you're interested, and I will prioritize it against my other build projects. Very, very short kind of showcase follows this narrative of this build. Thanks very much for tuning in and watching this. Keep watching if you're interested to see a bit more from this build. Subscribe for more if you haven't already, and I will talk to you next time.
Exile, you are a welcome omen. Survivor, you are well prepared for the end. This is a flying
I'm not up to that just yet. We will be best friends, Beast. We will be best friends, Beast, until we slaughter you. You have been captured, Beast. You will be a survivor, or you will be food. There are no more worthy beasts nearby.
I'm not up to that just yet.
Once more into the breach.